iniciada.
ZenVStyle.com. 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 ZenVStyle.com.
Great. All right, viewers, welcome to the Black Agenda Podcast. I'm your co-host, Adrian Guest, along with co-host Devin Dito. Today is March 6, 2021, and it's weekly Roundup number 7. We've got a lot of great news for you, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Starting off, the first thing we wanted to talk about within our first segment is the slave letter project that was assigned to some middle schoolers in our home state of Mississippi. Not to talk too much about Mississippi because we're going to bring them back up later on, but Devin, this is an interesting story right here. Just to give you some background, viewers, there was leaders of the Mississippi school district that decided to do kind of like I don't even know what they want to call it, but a slave writing assignment, I guess is what you can call it, where they asked students to pretend that they were enslaved people and write letters to their relatives back in Africa. Maybe they were trying to get people to sympathize or realize systemic racism, but it was really not a good activity. This was from the Purvis Middle School, so this was Lamar County. They apologized for it. Saying that, I guess it was taken out of context. There was a little bit of backlash from it. But Devin, I don't really know what to think about it. When you've got, people trying to encourage people to be like, slaves and write slave letters. We even saw, in Wisconsin, there was a similar lesson where students were asked how they would punish enslaved people who were being disobedient. So, this whole mentality of let's put people in the minds of being slaves and write and do. I don't know what they were trying to do, Devin, but it didn't really come through. I mean, when you look at the school district, they're about 8% white, 12% black. Mm-hmm. So maybe they were trying to teach some cultural competency or something. But I think there's a better way to do it. What do you think?
No, there's absolutely a better way to do it. I mean, this is kind of, I go back to our episode with Dr. LeGarrette King, who talked about why it's so hard for people to teach Black history. This is one of those moments where you're just like, why is it so hard to just teach Black history? And why do we have to go with these weird, overcompensating activities like writing a letter, as if you're a slave back home to Africa? First off, Africa is a continent, not a country. So it's like you don't just write a letter to Africa. You have to find there are countries within Africa that we came from. So that's the first problem. And then it's just I don't understand why we have to do things like this when we have a history, a Black history that you can teach to the students. And we don't do this for people like, the Jews, during the Holocaust. You don't need to write a letter as a Jew to understand and have empathy for what they went through. But for some reason, we need activities like this to have empathy for slaves. And what it does to me is it highlights the problem, which is that we've taught generations of people that slavery wasn't that bad. So now we need to go back and teach the next generation to have empathy for people who were enslaved, which is that should tell you right there, we're teaching this wrong. If we have to go back and have them write letters to empathize, that means in the textbooks, it's not telling the full truth. If it told the full truth of what slavery was really like, then you wouldn't need to tell people that you need to have empathy for, what slaves went through. And so it's just ridiculous. And again, it's a district that is mostly white, and they ordered here a prepackaged PowerPoint that included this. And we'll show you a screenshot of the actual activity within the PowerPoint. I mean, it says it right there. It's a slave letter writing activity. Even it says like you get like a daily grade if you do it. So I mean, this is just this is what we're doing to the kids instead of just teaching them what just Black history. This is what we have to do to them to get them to have empathy for what slaves went through, because we don't want to tell the real story of what happened. We want to do activities like this, and that's just not how you should be teaching the history of the country.
Exactly. I mean, what good does it do for a white middle schooler to pretend to be a slave? That doesn't really do anything, because I mean, one thing, if you look at, white privilege in our country, I mean, they don't really even have anything to draw from unless they were someone who grew up poor to even really attach, to being a slave. I don't even know how you draw from that. And then secondly, what is that empathy really teaching? It's not teaching anything about Black history. It's not teaching anything about, what we did, during the Civil War, World War II, or what we did to progress, infrastructure in our country, or what we did to advance medicine and science. Those are the types of things that you should be teaching, not just trying to get students to, picture us as being enslaved, because that's just painting another narrative that, Black people are just slaves and that's all they are. They were liberated and here they are maybe complaining, and now we need you to have some empathy for them. That's what this assignment is really doing. So a missed opportunity for the school district in Mississippi. I mean, I get where they're trying to come off being more culturally diverse and trying to teach a different narrative, but maybe they should have consulted with the NAACP, or maybe they should have used the BLM curriculum that we talked about from last week. Maybe that would have been a little bit better than this PowerPoint they got. But viewers, leave your comments if you may have some thoughts on this, but we're gonna say that this was a bad move. So if you think it's different, let us know.
No, you're right.
Yeah, go ahead, Devin.
No, I mean you're right, and again, it just harkens back to the problem of what we have with teaching just Black history. That's it. Like, who came up with this idea? Who thought this was a good idea to have, like you say, have white kids act as slaves and write letters back to Africa, which is a continent? So where is it going? Like, this is wrong all the way around. So we don't have to do this. Our history is not that difficult to teach. We
might as well have been telling them to write letters to Santa Claus at that point.
I mean, come on. Like, they're slaves. There should not be a problem with having empathy for them. But when you don't understand what actually happened to them, and you think they were just out in the field singing and dancing and, thinking everything was holly jolly, loving their masters, then you do have to do studies like this to get people to understand how awful slavery really was, and so it's just terrible. But we wanted to make sure we pointed it out that story came out this week. In 2021, we are still seeing things like this and having to explain to people that they should have empathy for people who were enslaved and treated as objects. And so our next story is kind of not that heavy, but it is a story again about the current pandemic. And so I'm sure everybody's heard it, but Texas and Mississippi are, on the front lines as far as opening right back up and trying to get back to, quote unquote normal and whatever that is. And so on Tuesday, Greg Abbott issued an executive order ending the mask mandate in Texas, and he is allowing all businesses to reopen at 100% capacity beginning on Wednesday of this upcoming week. And his reasoning is because of recoveries and vaccinations, reduced hospitalizations, and safe practices. And so just to give you an idea, from the numbers from Texas, the COVID tracking project, as of yesterday, Texas has about 2.7 million cases, and they had on Friday about 6,800 confirmed new cases. So they're still averaging quite a bit, and that's a almost a 2% increase in new cases over the last week. So what we're seeing is, that we talked about on the show, the numbers were going down almost every single week we were reporting them, but they're starting to kind of plateau, and actually in some cases they're starting to go up. And now, Adrian, we have Governor Abbott and Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi, drinking, like you say, drinking the same Kool-Aid. And they both issued executive orders kind of just getting rid of the restrictions, getting rid of the mask mandates, basically trying to get back to normal. Adrian, it just feels way too early. I know we were like on the cusp of having, Biden just said, the vaccine is coming and the numbers were dropping. So I get it, but to just go willy-nilly, get rid of all mask mandates and all that stuff, it just seems a little early. Where it's like we're waving a white flag or waving a victory flag, and we haven't gotten there yet.
No, I mean, when you look at the numbers, I mean, if my state had almost a 2% increase in the last week, I wouldn't be saying, stop wearing masks. Even in Mississippi, I mean, they're, smaller population. So they had about, 300,000 confirmed cases, about 600 yesterday was added to that, and about 1.1% increase over the last 7 days. but that doesn't mean that you should go ahead and just open back up. If you look at the numbers of how many of the population's been vaccinated, the numbers of that is not that many. We're still doing a lot of people who are only age 65, working in certain industries, high risk. So the whole general population hasn't been vaccinated. And when you've got governors who just want to pull back and give up, it's bad. I mean, you've got Dr. Fauci, the expert on the situation, who's already said that, his quote, "We know that these interventions work. It's very clear. When you implement them, you see the cases go down. When you pull back, the cases go up." I mean, it's right there. I mean, you've got an expert, not Donald Trump, not a Lynn Wood or somebody like that. This is an expert who's been in Republican and Democratic administrations who's just trying to do his job and get us out of this nightmare. You even have business leaders who don't like this. Texas businesses, Mississippi businesses, they already had a struggle trying to get people to come into their business with masks. I remember going into some restaurants and seeing managers argue with people because they would try to come in with their shirts over their nose or no mask or ask for a mask. And now you've got government saying, well, we're not even going to do a mask mandate. So how are you going to have safety in certain businesses? So, Devin, it's, very shameful because, when you think about it, especially Mississippi, I mean, they already have a lot of people who've been hit hard with it, especially in the Black and brown communities. Texas is no different. So this is not the time to, pull back. One good news, viewers, we did see Alabama Governor Kay Ivey. She's actually going to be extending her state's mask mandate until April 9th, but she did say it's going to officially end on that day. So I hope the numbers for Alabama is favorable on April 9th. Maybe she's got a crystal ball, Devin, and she knows that, despite what's going to happen, she knows that Alabama's going to be ready. But that's what this is all about, viewers. Yes, we're tired of being in quarantine. It's been, almost a full year now since we started doing this, but we've lost a lot of lives. We're not doing a little COVID segment, but I know the numbers are over 500,000. So we've lost a lot of people. We've had a lot of cases. We've gone through a lot of tests. We've strained our healthcare system. So in order for us to get through this, we've got to, still continue to buckle down until we're all vaccinated. We got to make sure everybody's got a shot, Devin.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's like, we don't need a spike right before we get to May when things should be pretty close to, whatever normal is. And so, and again, to me, what didn't make sense was I can understand opening up the businesses maybe to 75% capacity, maybe even 100%. But what sense does it make to at least get rid of the mask mandate? Like that didn't make any sense to me, because wearing a mask is like the last thing you could do. It's the easiest thing you could do to stop the spread of the virus. Just wear a mask when you go in the store, when when you're out and about. It's not, restricting businesses. They can still come in. They just have to wear a mask. It just didn't make sense. If you want people who, and again, like you say, the businesses are trying to get people in. If you want folks to go out and shop and get back to normal, they're going to want to feel safe. So they're going to feel safe when people wear a mask until we get most of the population vaccinated. So it didn't make sense to get rid of the mask mandate and also open up businesses to 100% capacity. We are nowhere near normal yet. And you see this split now happening between the governors in these states and the businesses who are like, no, you still have to wear a mask when you come in the store. Like, forget what the governor said. We still are going to require you to do this and take the proper precautions. And I think that's the right course until we get, May, June, July, when we have a significant part of the population that's vaccinated. Then we can start to remove these mask mandates. And I don't say many good things about Governor Kay Ivey, but I will give her kudos for at least having sense enough to extend her mask mandate until April 9th. I mean, that makes sense. There's no rush, to get out there and be first to open up, because it's, it's only going to hurt at this point because we are so close to the end of it. It may seem like, what is it going to hurt, but we already see the numbers are bouncing back up. So that's not what you want to see right now. And so we just wanted to make sure we point that out, and just, I think we're opening up too early to answer the question, but let us know in the comments if you think we are moving a little too fast as far as reopening. And so just put those in the comments. We'll make sure to point it out and tell people what you said. And so before we go into our first break, we did want to mention, again, I mentioned, Joe Biden did say that we're going to have vaccines ready. And so he's come out and said on Tuesday that we're actually going to have enough vaccines for every single adult in America by the end of May, which is 2 months earlier than that we actually expected it. And so this came after reports that the company Merck will actually help manufacture the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine that was approved for emergency use on Saturday. And so just to give you an update too, as far as the vaccine goes, we're a little bit over 10%. 10% of the population has actually been vaccinated. So we're getting there slowly, but we're not anywhere near just getting rid of mask mandates and opening up all the way. So just a little kind of a COVID update, but also just a warning to still take the proper precautions when you go out. Social distance, wear your mask, all that stuff. We're almost there. We're rounding the corner. We're almost there, I promise. So with that, that's going to do it for our first segment here. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we'll talk about we're going to go to Jackson, Mississippi. We all know that there's a huge water crisis happening up there. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about, I believe we're going to give you an update from Capitol Hill about the stimulus package and some other things. So stick with us, and we'll talk about that after the break.
All right, viewers, let's get back into it. We want to talk about Jackson, Mississippi. Everybody's been talking about this probably, and everybody should know about it. But in case you haven't, the winter storms that struck Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi caused about 96 breaks and leaks in Jackson's main water system. 53 of them have been repaired so far, but there's still about 40,000 or so residents that are under a boil water advisory. If the water pressure continues to improve, that might be lifted by the end of this weekend, but keeping our fingers crossed about that. The city is asking for about $47 million from the state to improve the water infrastructure because the pipes are actually over 100 years old. So it's not like, I think the city's the government's been painting this as a problem of the city, but this has been a long-standing problem that Jackson has had. In fact, it's not uncommon for them to have some water problems. The mayor actually said that $47 million, though, is only like a down payment. There's a quote from a publication where he said it would literally cost more than $1 billion, and that's with a B, not an M or anything. That's a B, $1 billion to replace the entire system. And the thing that's just so interesting about this is that when you hear what the state leadership is saying about this, like the Lieutenant Governor Dilbert Holzman, it's appalling, Devin. When I saw this, I think we've got a little clip of this, but when I saw this, I was like, this is pure government failure. This is why we entitled this segment like this, viewers, government failure. But he said the prime mover of solving the problem needs to be the city itself. Those people have to come up with a reasonable plan to get their water bills out on time. He continued, where do you start? What are the most complicated places? What's your plan to do that? How much money is it going to take? And how are you even going to pay for it? I haven't even seen any of that. Clearly, it's not the state. The city is the city of Jackson. It elects the mayor, it elects its city councilman, and those people need to come up with a plan. So, he's basically just giving it up to them. And, Mississippi Today, Devin, they talk to other top state leaders, and they also share the same sentiment. And it's viewers, not to get racist, but that's what it seems to be. Jackson is about 80% Black, and these are the people who are primarily being affected by it. These are the of that 40,000, most of the people are Black. When you look at Lieutenant Governor Holzman and most of the top leaders in Jackson, they live on the north side where they've had some renovations to their infrastructure. But where the Black people live, they haven't seen this sort of infrastructure to be improved. So that's why they're having to suffer. But, since the top officials aren't, suffering, it's okay. So, Devin, that's where we are. I mean, that's, like I said, not to make it so black and white, but when you have the fact that most of the people suffering are Black, and you've got, leaders who are predominantly white saying things like this, it's not our problem. We're not going to help you when y'all need $1 billion. To rejuvenate a 100-year-old system. It's shameful, Devin. It's really, really shameful.
It's shameful, but that is the attitude that usually happens when something happens to a majority Black city. We saw this play out in Flint, up in Michigan. I mean, you literally had a Black city being poisoned, and people were just like, "Nah, it's okay. The water's fine." It's like, no, and this is how they. Look at cities that are run by us. Jackson is the capital of Mississippi. Like, how is this even possible for the state capital to not have water, for these long-term outages to be happening? Look, you can say it's city mismanagement, and maybe that is, part of the issue here is some mismanagement within the city leadership. But at the same time, this is the state capital. And a lot of the people who work at the state capitol live in Jackson. They just don't live in the part of Jackson where we stay. They live in, like you were saying, the north part of Jackson, which is very, very nice. All their infrastructure is, fairly new or updated. And Jackson has just kind of been left to fend for itself when it comes to trying to make repairs. This stuff, like the mayor of Jackson said, this stuff is extremely expensive. And Mississippi is already one of the poorest states in the country. And you need money for infrastructure. So something's got to give here. And it seems like the state is okay with people in Jackson just going without water. It just doesn't seem, it's like that tough stepfather mentality. I'm not sure where it came from. When you hear that, pull yourself up by your bootstrap, you've heard that so much from conservatives, people who run the state of Mississippi, that it's your problem. And it's not their fault, or it's not the state's fault for underfunding Jackson or not giving them the proper resources to modernize the infrastructure in the state's capital. Like, I just don't believe that if this was a city of 80% white people and they were without water for this long, that you would have people like Deborah Holzman going out there saying, well, it's your fault, you need to come up with a plan. They wouldn't be saying that. They would be moving heaven and earth to get those people the resources and the water and the infrastructure they needed. But it doesn't happen with us like that. And that's a problem. And it's really sad to see that in a city that's 80% Black, that they have these types of problems. And this is not new. We've always known that Jackson has had issues, whether it's potholes or the water infrastructure. Jackson has major infrastructure problems, and they have just ignored it. So this is not a new thing. And so it's just, you would expect more from the state leadership, but at the same time, this has always been the attitude when it comes to trying to help do anything for, African Americans and Black people. It's always, you fix it. It's your problem. It's your fault. And when it comes to helping, white people who are having issues with, opioids or something like that, it's, no, this is a national emergency. We need to move all federal resources or state resources to fix it. and you see the double standard that we're having to work up against. I mean, literally, it's the capital of the state, people. Like, you don't just ignore that and say, hey, it's your problem. You live and work in this city, and how do you sleep at night knowing that there are people in the city who don't have water? Like, what? Like, come on. Like, this is not okay. And it's pathetic as far as state leadership goes.
No, it is. I mean, it just goes to the fact that Mississippi is very antiquated. Mississippi has never elected a statewide black official. There is no statewide black official right now there. When you look at the legislature, blacks are outnumbered, so they don't really have a lot of influence when it comes to helping, Jackson, Mississippi out and deviating some budget appropriations to help the city. So, I mean, it's crazy that you've got to have people who struggle like this, and state leadership just says, "Well, deal with it. That's your problem." No, I mean that's a state problem. I mean they can't. When you've got a city that says they can't handle it, that's when the state's supposed to come in. Whether it's education, whether it's infrastructure, healthcare. That's what the state government is for. I mean, it's to make sure that the state can operate, particularly if you've got it, in Jackson where the capital is. I mean, if it, I definitely, I'm like Devin, where I would think if this were, Brandon, Mississippi, or Madison, Mississippi, or something like that, it would be drastically different. I mean, it's, you go to, if you're from Mississippi, you go to those places, how drastically different it looks comparatively to Jackson, and how much money and investment is put there. So they wouldn't allow places like that to go without water. I mean, some of these people, Dev, I think it's been like 3 weeks. Can you imagine? I mean, I saw a quote from one family where they said they can't bathe, they can't, do laundry, they can't cook. I mean, they're having to pour rainwater into the toilet just to make it flush. And I mean, these are people who, it's not like we're in the 1920s or something like that. We've got outhouses. I mean, this is we're 2021. We're supposed to have electricity, running water. I mean, we're a developed nation, a superpower. We should be able to make things like this happen for our people. But no, because they're predominantly black, that's not going to happen. No one's going to start a big global campaign to help Jackson, Mississippi. And that's not to knock like a Puerto Rico or Haiti or something like that. But it's to say that you've got people who are struggling right here in your own, borders, and you've got people who are in leadership that don't want to help, don't want to even lift a finger. So, Devin and I, we feel that it's our job, even though we're not on a national platform, to bring some sort of attention and awareness to things like this. Because if we don't, who will? If we don't, no one's going to tell the story the right way. They're going to make it look like, Lieutenant Governor Holzman, that we're the victims and we're the one that's supposed to be the blame and it's our fault, rather than us just trying to say that this is a 100-year problem that Jackson's had and they need some help. So yeah, Devin, I'm hopeful that they'll be able to, move forward and get some relief here. To go to our next little topic here, we wanted to give you some Capitol Hill updates because we are happy to see that Capitol Hill is moving. It's Devin, whenever I saw this stuff coming out, I was like, man, the past 4 years of the Trump administration, Capitol Hill, I was like, it was impeachment. That's about the only thing I could think of on Capitol Hill was just impeachment, no actual legislation. But fortunately, everybody knows that the COVID package passed the Senate, very, very narrow. 51-50. Vice President Harris had to swoop in and save the day and break the tie there. So we'll be seeing some stimulus package deals coming through. It's got to go back to the House for final vote, but since the Democrats rule the House, it'll likely pass. Mm-hmm. They did though have to make some compromises here just to get it through. People like Joe Manchin, he's kind of a stickler, so I'm sure they had to do some things to kind of help him out. But just to give you a little quick update, viewers, some of the new things in the bill: more money for rural hospitals, more generous access to federal programs like live venue operators, tax benefits for student loan borrowers, additional money for state, local, and tribal governments. They eliminated the $15 minimum wage part, so everybody can kind of let your air out of your tires on that one. The other thing that might let some more air out of people's tires is that they did lower the cap for the direct payment. So I think before it phased out at a higher level, but right now it's going to phase out for anyone earning 80,000 or more, and then couples earning 160K or more. So I'm really glad, Devin, that I filed my taxes early because I am under that threshold. So should be able to get that. But the bill is expected, like I said, to pass along party lines, and President Biden will hopefully sign it by March, Devin, by mid-March.
Yeah, I think that's much needed relief, and a lot of people, are nervous that we may be doing too much, for the economy. But understand that there are still a lot of people out there who are hurting, and the money is absolutely needed. I mean, it's definitely been a tough year for a lot of folks, and so it's much needed. And so, like you say, Capitol Hill is working finally. We've moved past Trump and impeachment, and so the next thing that they've been busy doing is by another party line vote, the House has now advanced legislation to help reform our elections, again without GOP support. One Republican did vote for it, but said his vote was actually he voted for it by mistake. So he voted for, this was House Resolution 1, or HR 1. You may have heard about it, but it requires the following things, among a bunch of other things. But the big items in this House Resolution 1 is that it would actually it would make states automatically register eligible voters and offer same-day registration. It would limit states' abilities to purge the registered voters from the ballots. It would also restore voting rights for former felons. It would institute a reversal of state voter ID laws, and then it would also seek to expose what they call dark money by requiring organizations to disclose large donors, and creates a matching system for small donors. It would also require 15 days of early voting and no excuse absentee ballots. And then it would also create a nonpartisan commissions that would handle the redrawing of congressional districts. And so the bill, and the issue with the bill is that in the Senate, it will likely need 60 votes to get past the filibuster, which we know there are not going to be, 6 or 7 Republicans who are going to vote for this. So it's great to see this happen, but I could honestly, Adrian, the very first thing, automatically registering people and offering same-day registration, is going to be a no-go for a lot of Republican states, especially, limiting the voter purges, giving felons the right to vote, all those things. That's a non-starter in places like, Florida and Indiana and all those. I think Florida may have actually given felons the right to vote, but places like Mississippi, what we were just talking about, that ain't happening. That's not happening. They're not going to do that, and it's probably not going to pass the Senate either. So
No, it's probably not. I mean, because you think about what happened after 2020,
yep.
More Republican states did, they cracked down on voter laws. They tried to make it harder for people to vote. And this law is making it easier for a lot of people to vote who are eligible. So that's a big deal, eligible voters. And, I really, really love the nonpartisan commissions for redrawing the congressional districts.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge because that shouldn't be up to Congress in the first place. That should be a nonpartisan group because that really says who controls a lot of power within states. So viewers, call your senators, call your representatives, call anybody, keep your fingers crossed. We need this bill to pass because we need some reform in voting in America. One of the other things was the George Floyd Policing Act, or rather it's called the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. On Wednesday, the House passed it. Really, really great deal. Hopeful that the Senate will take this up and pass it. The bill will ban chokeholds and alter qualified immunity for law enforcement. The vote, again, was along party lines. Comes 9 months after the death of George Floyd. So it's sad that it took so long, but glad that we're starting to see some movement on some legislation after some horrific events seen in Black America. Some of the things that the legislation would do, viewers, obviously ban no-knock warrants in certain cases, mandate data collection on police encounters, prohibit racial and religious profiling, and mandate training on profiling, require the use of federal funds to ensure use of body cameras, establish a national police misconduct registry, and redirect funding to community-based policing programs. So, Devin, I mean, it's clear to see that this one is a no-brainer. We need this. I didn't even read all everything within the bill, but just these highlights. These should be easy things that anybody should be able to accept. But of course, Republicans say the bill is going too far. They say it prevents police from being able to effectively do their jobs. Of course, we know that the Republicans, led with Senator Scott, the only Black Republican in the Senate, they had their own bill to kind of help with policing. But Democrats already said it didn't go far enough. One good thing, viewers, that we wanted to point out is that Senator Scott, Senator Booker, along with Representative Karen Bass, they are reportedly meeting to maybe hopefully discuss the compromise. I don't know, but I hope that this will pass, Devin, because it's clear after all the events of 2020, we also need reform in policing in America.
Oh yes, we've been past needed reform for our police departments. And look, we're not saying that police aren't doing a great job and that they aren't necessary. We're not saying dismantle them, but we're obviously saying there's a problem when it comes to how Black people are treated at the hands of police. And so this tries in some ways, banning no-knock warrants, mandating data collection, prohibiting racial, profiling. I don't know how we're going to keep tabs on those things, but it sounds good on paper. And establishing a national police misconduct is a big one because typically when a police officer does something, gets like a complaint or things like that, when they leave the department, it doesn't necessarily follow them when they move to another police department. So that's a big issue when trying to keep track of cops who are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, is that there is no communication between departments or different jurisdictions as far as when an officer goes and applies in another state or city. There's no way to just like look up, what a cop's record is at another department. So that is a big issue when trying to weed out, so-called bad apples there. But our last thing here quickly is just the last bill here. This was introduced by Congresswoman Maxine Waters and her also Democratic colleague Maryland's David Trone. They introduced legislation. It's called the Workforce Justice Act, and they introduced this on Wednesday before the House of Representatives. And this is actually before the House voted on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And so her bill, the Workforce Justice Act, would actually assist more than 70 million Americans who have challenges re-entering the workforce after being incarcerated. What this would do is it would remove the question of whether you have a previous incarceration. It would remove that question off the job application. And they call this banning the box. You would take this off. Employers could not ask you whether or not you were previously incarcerated. And the bill would also incentivize states to encourage all public and private companies to eliminate the criminal history question by tying its implementation to critical criminal justice funds from the federal government. We all know money talks, and so when you start threatening people's funding, you might actually get some action. So this, like I say, the effort is called, ban the box, but already we've seen 36 states, including the District of Columbia, and over 150 cities and counties have already adopted a ban the box policy. 14 states, including Maryland and California, plus 20 other cities and counties, have extended these policies to private employment. So at least in, 14 states and 20 cities and counties, you cannot ask a potential employee whether or not they've been previously incarcerated. That's a big deal, Adrian, because we've talked about it before. It's an issue we're trying to figure out, where people are being released from prison, but they're having a real problem getting back ingrained into society because they made a mistake, and it could be something as simple as having a bag of weed on you, and you get pulled over, and that's on your record, and now every time you apply for a job, you have to check the box of, yes, I'm a felon, and immediately we know, whether you believe it or not, unconscious bias, they're going to weed out those applications. They're not going to hire those people, and so it is it's been an issue. We're trying to get people back into society because we do want them to be part of the process, and giving them the right to vote was another thing that we had to fight to do, because they are still people. They are still citizens, although they have a record.
David, the interesting thing to me is that here in America, we talk about how religious and we're a Christian nation, and one of the principles of Christianity is just forgiveness. Everyone's a sinner, and you have to ask for forgiveness, and you're renewed all over again daily. But when it comes to people who've been incarcerated and prisoners, that whole sense of forgiveness and being able to be renewed daily and become a new person, that's lost. And I don't understand that here in our country, because we talk so much about being a country of morals and values and principles. Well, if people have served their time and they've been released, they're not when people are released, they're not releasing people who just murdered somebody last week, or someone who's at risk of going and doing the same thing over again. These people have shown that they're worthy enough to be released and be integrated back into society. And we as citizens have to accept them and get them back onto this chain of society, because we're all working together to benefit each other. So I hope that Congressman Maxine Waters, she's from California, so she's hopefully she'll be able to get this on through, get some more support. But before we go to our break, one little thing that we saw is that Will Smith and Dwayne Johnson of The Rock, for those who don't know, talking about politics. During an interview on the Pod Save America, Will Smith teased the idea of running for public office, saying that he absolutely has an opinion when it comes to activism, systemic racism, and ideas on the country's future. Hopefully he has an opinion, he should. And he says that he might consider down the road doing something once the office kind of cleans up a little bit. So I don't know if he was talking about the president's office or the governor's office, or he just said once the office cleans up a little bit. And then, of course, The Rock, I think he's been talking about running for president, for a while, even before Donald Trump was talking about running. His reaction was, he'll just wait and listen to the people. So I guess if enough people write in, The Rock or whatever on a write-in ballot, maybe he's going to run or something. I don't know what he means by that, but I hope, Devin, if he does run, he or Will Smith run for anything, they don't use their celebrity appeal only to win, that they actually come with some concrete ideas, like Ice Cube, contract with Black America, come with something like that. So crazy stuff happening, Devin, around America. But viewers, we're going to always talk about it, bring you the breaking news. We're going to take another break here and come back into our third segment. Some really, really interesting stories in the third segment. So make sure you stick with us, and we'll be right back. That was good. That was like 23 minutes or so, but still, that was the other first segment was only like 18, 19, something like that. Oh. Viewers, welcome back. Let's get into our third segment here. We wanted to talk about an interesting story out of California. It's we're not necessarily prejudiced towards any parts of the country. I feel like we're always talking about Texas and California, Mississippi, but there's always some interesting things coming out of those three states. And this story is no different. This is actually coming out of Stockton, California, where they actually did an experiment on universal basic income. So this actually lasted for a period of about 2 years, where they randomly selected people to give them $500 a month, no strings attached. The program was called SEED, which is the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration. It was founded in February 2019 by then Mayor Michael Tubbs, and it was funded by donors. It gave 125 people living in neighborhoods at or below Stockton's median household income that $500 payment. And the study actually found that the participants had improved job perspectives, financial stability, and overall well being. And it's really nice because one of the things that you see within the study is that people actually use the money for needed things. Whenever you look at the independent researchers, they actually determined that full-time employment rose. There were a lot of critics who were saying, "Oh, if you give people money, they're just gonna, just sit at the house and just sit on that free money." But these people actually went out and actually got more employment. They actually had improved financial well-being, physical well-being, even improved emotional health. I mean, it's really clear because those people had money to make sure their basic needs were met. They had money to buy food, pay their utilities, pay auto costs. Whenever you look at it, Devin, only actually less than 1% went towards alcohol or tobacco. So that's why these people were actually using the money for things that they really needed. Supporters say that this is a direct way to help people living in poverty. When you can guarantee them an income, it alleviates stress. It provides financial security. It makes sure that they have a little bit of extra money to maybe invest, put into retirement, avoid debt, get better jobs. So when you have critics say that this is going to be a bad program, no, it's not. The research says full employment actually increased by 12%, Devin. So this is clearly something that works. The one thing, Devin, that's really nice to see is that before Mayor Tubbs lost re-election, he founded a group called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. It's a coalition of about 40 mayors advocating for direct recurring cash payments in cities like Seattle and San Antonio and Pittsburgh. So hopefully this can be something that we can get on a federal level, or at least a push in several different states. But Devin, the evidence is here, improved financial security, overall well-being, and even full employment. So, I mean, what's not to love about that?
No, I mean, that's very interesting to see that. And the reason I say that is because we're kind of going through an experiment right now. The checks that we're sending to people, we've sent 3 checks now, 1,200, 600, and now 1,400. It could be double that if if you're family, but we're going through an experiment right now, honestly, with universal basic income. We've never done this before, especially the enhanced unemployment benefits is a kind of a spinoff of that universal basic income thinking there. And so what it shows is that, like you say, the kind of the stereotypes of, well, if you give people money, they're just going to sit at home. That's obviously not true. We saw that both with the stimulus checks we've been giving people this year, but also what you see here in Stockton is that people, they use this money for basic things. They use it to feel more secure. They pay down bills. They may pay down debt and credit and things like that. So what you're saying is that the old way of thinking is kind of, being challenged and saying, well, wait a minute now. What if we did give people $500 every single month? What would that do for them? It would help a lot. You could say $500 shouldn't change your life, but there are a lot of people out there. When you have a country with a minimum wage of $7.25 in some places, that's not going to cut it. So that additional, whatever it is a month could make a big difference for a lot of households. And they're not just going to sit at home and blow it. Yes, there will be people who will abuse the system, but that's what every system, every system gets abused by a small percentage, but it's not like an overall thing. I think we need to do this. And, credit to Andrew Yang for being the one to really put it on a national stage. I think people were talking about it before, but he really put this on the national agenda of something like universal basic income, taking the place of things like a social security check and food stamps, maybe rolling that all into one, check every month or something, which is a UBI. And we're seeing that maybe we're starting to see more cities take hold and say, we can give the people back the money that they're paying us in taxes and let them use it for things that they actually need. So I'm all for it, trying to figure out ways that we can help people. get ahead and not feel as though if they lose their job tomorrow that the whole way of life is going to change. That's not how things should really work here in the country. And so I'm all for it. I love it. And so our next story here in our segment before we go to break is going to be about the one and only Andrew Cuomo, who seems to not be able to catch a break after having been, the most beloved governor during the coronavirus pandemic to now the most hated and has crisis after crisis, criticism after criticism. And so right now, we just got off of where Andrew Cuomo, we talked about him last week, was under fire for, fudging the numbers when it came to the number of nursing home deaths in New York. Well, now he has a new crisis where he's now being accused of sexually harassing two women who worked for him. And so there are actually now calls for an investigation into Governor Cuomo's workplace behavior after a second former employee of his administration went public on Saturday with claims that she had been sexually harassed by the governor. And her name is Charlotte Bennett. And they say she's a low-level aide in the governor's administration until November. And she told the New York Times that Cuomo asked her inappropriate questions about her sex life, including whether she had ever had sex with older men. Her accusation came days after another former aide, Lindsey Boylan, a former deputy secretary for economic development and special advisor to the governor, she elaborated on harassment allegations that she first made in December. Now, Boylan says Cuomo subjected her to an unwanted kiss and inappropriate comments. And so, Adrian, Cuomo was already receiving a huge amount of criticism for underreporting the nursing home deaths. And then now you add, this on top of it. They're talking about, possibly trying to maybe impeach the governor there in New York. They're already, there have been calls for investigations into his behavior. And so I don't know. I guess we have the question of how did Cuomo get here? Because he did go from being kind of the anti-Trump in the beginning to now, the media built him up and now the media is kind of tearing him down at the same time. But that's how it happens. And look, I think Andrew Cuomo there up in New York enjoyed the popularity and the praise that he was getting in the beginning. The man literally wrote a book about the pandemic during the pandemic. Like, who does that? Like, he wrote a book about the pandemic, and he was in the midst of it. And so, and I think people were even talking about at one point maybe replacing Joe Biden with Andrew Cuomo because he was so popular. And so now it's like, now he's like untouchable. Nobody wants anything to do with him up there in New York. And so I don't know, Adrian, it's really amazing to see the trajectory of how far he rose up being the anti-Trump to now being a governor, a disgraced governor, borderline getting ready to have to resign or be impeached.
It's one of those things, Devin, where it's interesting to see it, but it's almost not surprising because it's another story of a politician doing sleazy things, which politicians often do because they get in a position of power and they think that, I can do whatever I want. And they can't. They're not, no one's above the law, whether you're the president or governor who's real popular, an alderman or mayor, doesn't matter. No one's above the law. But you see here, Andrew Cuomo just, I'm not going to demonize his or villainize his character because I don't know him personally, but only thing you can see is just that he just abuses power. You got somebody asking somebody about their sex life. I don't know about you, Devin, but that's not something I talk about at work. I'm not talking to my coworkers about what they're doing in the bedroom, or I don't go around asking people, hey, do you have sex with black guys? That's just not something you do. That's clearly inappropriate, especially when you're in a position of power. So I don't know where he got off thinking that he would be able to do this and it would never be brought to light. And maybe you have to look at the fact that he's white, and maybe he thought that white privilege would be enough to rule out. I think maybe his family is maybe it's some heritage somewhere else, but by and large, that's who he is. And I guess he thought he could kind of ride a curve and not have to worry to answer about anything. But this just shows you that you can't get out of this. It's not. Some people may say, well, this is the fault of the Me Too movement or something like that. But it's just it's just holding people accountable for their actions. If you're the governor, you're supposed to be looking out for people, not abusing them or using them or belittling them or degrading them. You're supposed to be uplifting the people. So I don't, how did he get here? I guess this is, for lack of a better answer, this is just Andrew Cuomo. He just was, made a mistake. Maybe, I guess looking back on our story about felons, I don't know if we just need to forgive them and move on, or, I hope that that's not the takeaway, but I definitely think that he deserves, a bit of, being able to, come back and do something. But I definitely think with this kind of stuff going on, you probably shouldn't be the governor. You should take some time, maybe step down, be with your family, go get some counseling or something like that, and then maybe come back as a public servant. But, when you're in a leadership position like this, you can't just say, well, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and there's no accountability. You got to be held accountable for this. And I think he's not wanting the investigation to move forward with the Attorney General, but are actually wanting somebody else to kind of help one of the Court of Appeals judges and the Attorney General to appoint someone jointly to investigate, rather than just abiding by the actual law in New York, which says the Attorney General is supposed to do it. So I think, if Cuomo is going to have some sort of integrity, he just needs to step back, I guess do like Donald Trump, just stand back and stand by, or whatever he said to the Proud Boys, and just let Attorney James just do her job. So that's Andrew Cuomo. Viewers, if you've got some comments about him, feel free to let us know what you think. Maybe you have a better reason for how he's come down at this point. Maybe you've got some history about him that we don't. I don't know if you can let us know about it. Another thing, though, before we go to our break, in case you missed it, space hurricanes are real. I didn't know about it. I always claim that, some would be knowledgeable in astronomy, but I didn't know anything about space hurricanes, Dev. I don't know if you did. But rather than raining down water, they rain down electrons. And we saw these recent pictures, but they were actually from 2014. So my question out of this was like, what else are they, hiding? If it took 7 years for us to know about space hurricanes, but hey, at least they're not hazardous. They're just something that you can just look and maybe admire if you can have a telescope. But I think we got a picture. Is that up, Devin?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Yeah, viewers, you can see the pretty lights from the space hurricane. So we're going to take our last break here, let you ponder on that. And when we return, we're going to return with our quick hits and our wrap up for the show. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
I'll start it then. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back. So as always, we like to end the show with some quick hits, which is some news you may have heard about, some things you may not have heard about. Just little tidbits of information to kind of leave you with. Usually funny. Most of the time, they're interesting stories. And so our first one here starts on social media. So if you were on Instagram this week, you may have noticed at one point that likes were not showing up. And so on Tuesday, there were, millions, thousands of confused users out there, at times distraught. Instagram users took to their accounts to complain about no longer being able to see the number of likes a post had received. And so Instagram made people aware of this back in 2019, that they were thinking about testing what they call private likes. And they say that they were testing it because they want their followers to focus on the photos and videos you share, not how many likes you get or they get. And so by Tuesday evening, the public outcry regarding the vanishing like counts was so loud that Instagram's PR team actually had to speak up and address it in a tweet, claiming that the disappearance was the result of a glitch in the system and not an intentional reset. So, Adrian, I don't know if they're just prepping us early to, for the change, but I definitely do think it's probably end up going to come, and they're going to change it to where you won't be able to see the likes on a post. I guess it's definitely a good thing. It is a lot of pressure out there when you do post something and it doesn't get, the likes of, like somebody else's picture. That isn't, I guess, an issue that they're trying to fix. So Instagram likes might be going away.
I know that's a hard thing when people in our society like to know how much they're liked. So they may need to come up with a better way to do that. Some other news in the WNBA, got a new owner, Renee Montgomery. Really good to see this. So Kelly Loeffler, the former U.S. Senator from Georgia, really glad to be saying that. Sold her ownership of the Atlanta Dream, and now Renee Montgomery, a former player of the WNBA team, has a stake in the organization as of yesterday. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports that the franchise was sold to a 3-member investor group that includes Renee Montgomery, who declined to play last year due to racism and coronavirus concerns, and retired from the league. She actually joined the Dream in 2018. A majority share of the women's basketball team was sold to Mr. Larry Goldstein, chairman of Northland Investor Corporation, a real estate investor firm from Boston. The Dream will be co-owned by Suzanne Arbor, president and COO of Northland, and Montgomery. The trio makes up the investor group, so you got 3 people that's going to be part of this investor group. The move makes Montgomery, who plans to be hands-on and leading the team, and Abrera, the first former player to be owner and executive of a WNBA franchise. So hope to see more people who are players being able to rise up to that point of being an owner. Hope to be seeing more diversity in being an owner, because that's one thing you definitely don't see in the WNBA, NBA, NFL, no matter what sports you have. So hopefully we can see more of this, Devin.
No, that's a great story, and kudos to her, man. Renee Montgomery really making some moves out there, becoming part owner of the team. So really, really great to see that. And another industry that could probably use more black owners is the video game industry, where 83% of minority teens play video games, but less than 3% make them. And so that shows a huge gap in diversity when it comes to creators, promoters, distributors within the video game industry. But now we have 2 men who have stepped up to solve this problem, and they started the Black Salt Corruption, which is a black-owned video game franchise to help bring diversity to the multi-billion-dollar gaming industry. And so the owners are Owen Ratliff and Jesse Wright. They're going to launch their own game on Nintendo Switch and PC. And so the Black Salt Corruption is a one-on-one 3D arena fighting game that allows kind of a complete freedom of movement around the arena rather than 3D characters doing combat on a 2D plane. And so the Black Salt Corruption 3D arena fighting game series is a combination of 2 comic book universes that collide to bring Black Salt versus Corrupt, much like Marvel versus Capcom. And so it's created a 100% tax deductible special Black Salt restricted use fund within the Varsity Esports. It's a 501c3 foundation, and it's going to offer grants to students and schools in low income and disenfranchised communities to provide STEM learning through gaming. And so, like I said, that's an industry that absolutely does need more diversity, particularly when you hear 83% of minority teens play the video games, but only 3% of us are actually making those games. So definitely cool to see that, and hopefully that takes off there. That's going to be coming soon to Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I know, Devin. I hope that's good. I don't play video games as much as I used to because I've gotten a little bit busier, but definitely remember not seeing a whole lot of black people in video games or making them or stuff like that. So that's going to be good. Another interesting story out of California again, a doctor trying to be on call, video call while performing surgery. Didn't think we'd be seeing something like this, but one interesting thing, the Medical Board of California said it would investigate the plastic surgeon who appeared to be video conferencing while operating. But give you a little bit of background, the doctor, whose name is Dr. Scott Green, appeared Thursday to the Sacramento Superior Court is for traffic violations. He appeared virtually, obviously because of the pandemic, but he was in an operating room wearing scrubs, and he had a patient in there. You can even hear medical machinery beeping in the background. The clerk reminded, the court clerk reminded Green that the proceedings were being live streamed because traffic trials are required by law to be open to the public. So Dr. Green understood, and he just proceeded to continue to operate, with his head down, just doing his thing, waiting on Commissioner Gary Link to enter the chamber. So when Commissioner Link appeared to enter, he saw the doctor on screen with his head down, operating or whatever, and the judge hesitated to proceed out of the concern for the patient. Dr. Green said that he had another surgeon right there with him who could, I guess, assist the patient while Dr. Green was having his court trial. But the judge said he didn't really feel comfortable with that. He thought that maybe we should just do this another day. So he told Green that let's just set another day for the trial. He said, quote, "We're not actively involved or participating in attending the needs of the patient." So I guess, he I don't know where Dr. Green got off of thinking he could operate on somebody, appear in court all at the same time. He must be very, very talented, Devin.
Yes, he must be extremely talented to multitask like that. Like you say, I've never heard of that before. But that's the 2020, the Zoom world here with the pandemic,
Hey, it's hard enough for me sometimes to read our scripts. I can't think about trying to operate on somebody and trying to do this at the same time.
No, that takes some multitasking skills. So, shout out to him for trying it. They didn't, he's going to have to come back, but he tried. But
he's getting investigated by the medical board, unfortunately.
Exactly. And so our next quick hit here is kind of a feel-good story here. And so after weeks of searching, a Goodwill store in Fort Worth, Texas, actually found an envelope containing $5,000 that a man mistakenly left in the pocket of a jacket he donated to the store. The man actually came back to the store after donating the jacket to say that his wife didn't realize that the envelope was in the pocket. So the store manager explained the process would take some time since they had to go bag by bag. They went several days with no success, and then the icy weather closed the location for multiple days. And Michaela De La Pena finally found the envelope after three weeks of searching. She was awarded a bonus. Probably wasn't $5,000, but she got a bonus, and she also got the Goodwill Medal of Integrity. And so much respect for her for returning the money, especially considering how hard times have been for people during the pandemic. So kudos to her. A lot of people would not have done that, including myself, probably. Just being honest.
Yeah, I was reading this and thinking the same thing, Devin. So I was like, times are tight, and $5,000. I was like, man, maybe they were thinking that somebody who was working here was going to find this, and they were just trying to also donate the $5,000. So I would have found some way to rationalize this and be like, yeah, I'm late on rent. I need to pay some bills. Because that bonus was definitely not $5,000. They probably gave her like an extra $1 an hour or something like that. But good. She's got some integrity, so at least she's got a medal for that. But our last little quick hit is about some gators in Florida. So, this shouldn't be any surprise to have Florida, gators in Florida. But One thing that is surprising is this couple. I guess the wife rather thought that the husband was playing a joke on her when he had told her that there was a gator in the garage. But being in Florida, if your spouse tells you that, you probably should believe them. So the couple, wife's name is Tori, the husband's name is Andy. They had just come home from a trip in Maine, and then Andy went to a gas station but left the garage door open. So whenever Tori had come, was I guess rummaging in the kitchen, Andy came in and was like, "Hey, there's an alligator in the garage." Tori didn't believe Andy, so she opened the door, and the alligator was literally on the other side of the door, and that's what Tori said. So Andy called 911, and then the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or FWC, came in. The gator was 7 feet long, so it was a pretty big gator. They rounded it up and relocated it to another habitat. So really, really interesting story there, just to kind of break up the little monotony of all the seriousness. But hey, like I said, if your spouse says they got a gator in the garage, you better believe them, Devin, because you never know, especially if you're in Florida.
No, this video is ridiculous. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I forgot. Go ahead and play some of that there.
Yeah, no, it's playing now. It was playing while you were talking. It's just watching it. It's just like, what do you like? You don't joke about an alligator being outside the house. That's not a joke. If somebody says that, you better take it seriously.
Yeah, I exactly. I mean, it's not like somebody saying, I see a spider or something like that. It's a gator, so you better take it serious. But that pretty much does it for us, viewers. We're at the end of it here. Thank you for sticking with us during our quick hit, during our news segments. As always, we got to talk a little bit about what we're going to be bringing you. Remember, hopefully you remember, because you've been tuning in this week, we're doing an HBCU awareness series for the month of March. Devin and I, we reworked our entire lineup because we had stuff planned for the month of March. But when Devin told me that it was HBCU awareness, he wanted to do a series, I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So really, really got an impressive lineup for you. If you haven't, go back. We did an episode with FAMU President Dr. Ray Robinson. We released 2 this week, one with Dr. Rick Gallo, president of Grambling State University, and another with Dr. Anthony Wutaw, provost and chief academic officer at Howard. So yeah, Devin, I'm glad we're doing this series honoring our HBCUs, bringing them some awareness. So viewers, make sure you go back and check out those past ones. And Devin, tell them about the ones we got this week.
Definitely. So again, like Adrian says, we got a great series that's going on here. And so this week we have 2 more great episodes. The first will be our conversation with Dr. Charlotte Morris, who is the interim president of Tuskegee University. That's going to air on Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And then our next conversation is going to be with Dr. Van Newkirk, who is the president of Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And that's going to air Thursday night at 7:30. Both of them will be shown on YouTube and Facebook. So if you already follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube, you're doing it the right way. You're not going to miss anything. But if you don't, go follow us right now on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube so you don't miss those interviews. And definitely, pay attention to this series. Our HBCU's survival depend on us being able to tell their stories and bring awareness and recognition to what they're doing. And so these have been great. Our interviews with Howard and Grambling State and Florida, they've all been very, very good. So it's worth tuning in, and it's worth going back and listening to the ones that have already come out. As always, we'll be right back here next Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Weekly Roundup number 8 coming to you March 13th. We'll bringing you more news from the past week. So again, tune in. Make sure you subscribe to us so you don't miss out on what we have coming up. And of course, we always ask for your support to us, the Black Agenda Podcast, because what we do here, it looks great, but it's not free. And so we do appreciate every little bit we can get. So Adrian, you can tell them where they can donate to us.
Yeah, exactly. As always, Devin, 2 things. The first thing I always say, we need the money. And obviously, I mean, this isn't free. By you donating, it's going to make it easier on us. It's going to alleviate some of that stress. We may be even to expand and do some other things. The other thing is that we're trying to really make this an action, a mission. We love bringing you the news. We love engaging and talking with leaders. We would love to do more things in the community, love to actually bring change in society that we keep talking about. But we live in a capitalistic society, and it takes money to implement change. So that's why we need it to fund what we're doing and also to implement some change in the society and the communities we're trying to work in. It's easy, $1 a month. I always say it's easy to start off with $1 a month. That's all we're asking for. You can give more. You can snowball. They're bigger. You can share, tell your family and friends. $1 is all it takes. Go to our website, click on the donate button. That's just blackagendapod.com. Or when you're listening to us on Podbean, my app post, all you got to do is click donate from there. One of the other things that we could use your funds for is partnering with other charities. For instance, the month of March, we're going to be honoring the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Really great organization to pair with our HBCU Awareness Series because, as their name is indicated, they're helping to send people to HBCUs. Their mission is to ensure student success by promoting educational excellence and preparing the next generation of workforce talent through leadership development. So really great organization, helping really great organizations like HBCUs. We're trying to highlight both of them. So we're great in that nature as well due to transitive property. So you should give your money to us as well. So yeah, Devin.
I love the use of the transitive property. I like it. So before we go, again, make sure you like, share, and follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our handle is at Black Agenda Pod. Always, please like, share, follow, whatever you see. We're trying to get this in front of as many people as we can. Also, again, make sure you follow us on Facebook and our events, but also subscribe to us on YouTube so you don't miss out on the interviews and shows that we have coming up. Some really, really good stuff coming. So again, just share with your family, friends, coworkers, anybody else who's around. And so again, we appreciate you tuning in and staying with us. This has been weekly roundup number 7, and we enjoy bringing you the news from the past week. And so with that, we're going to catch you next week, March 13th at 7:30 p.m. right back here on Facebook and YouTube. So thank you for sticking with us, and we'll catch you next time.